You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. That's not a theory. That's a real line, published by the World Economic Forum on their own website, in their own video. The title? Welcome to 2030. Written by Ida Auken. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. I mean, that's what they actually said. They wrote the date themselves. 2030. No house, no car, no privacy. Rent everything, own nothing, and somehow happy. They published it. Then they quietly deleted it. If it was harmless, why erase it? You don't have to imagine what this looks like. It's already happened, more than once. Let me show you. So, here's what happened. There was this odd little episode, now known as the Kindle incident. It raised more than a few eyebrows, and honestly, it made people question just what it means to own a book these days. A high school student named Justin Goronsky is doing his summer reading assignment on his Kindle. The book, George Orwell's 1984. He's highlighting it, taking notes, doing exactly what a good student does. One morning, he wakes up, opens his Kindle, and the book is gone. Not hidden. Gone. Amazon remotely deleted it, along with almost 2,000 other copies, overnight, without asking anyone. His notes vanished with it, because they were attached to a book he technically never owned. He'd only licensed it. Amazon apologized. Bezos personally apologized. They paid a settlement. But the lesson stuck around long after the apology. When you buy a digital book, you don't own a book. You own permission to read it for as long as the company allows. Now, let's talk about something that, well, really caught the world's attention. The Canadian protest. Here's a bigger one. February 2022, Canada. A group of truckers protest a government policy. A cross-border vaccine mandate requiring proof of vaccination to keep working their routes. This video isn't about whether that mandate was right or wrong. It's about what happened next, because that part isn't a matter of opinion. Truckers park in Ottawa and thousands of ordinary people donate money to support them, completely legally through normal donation platforms. The Canadian government invokes emergency powers and orders banks to freeze the accounts of anyone connected to the protest. No court order, no warning. 206 accounts, $7.8 million. Frozen instantly by a phone call from the government to the banks. People couldn't pay rent, couldn't buy groceries, couldn't access money that was, on paper, entirely theirs. And, you know, some of them weren't even protesters. Some had simply donated money. 2 separate Canadian courts have since ruled this was unlawful, illegal. It happened anyway, and well, it worked exactly as intended in the moment, because by the time the courts ruled, the protest was already gone. The mechanism was, honestly, quite simple. Accounts were frozen, and access to funds was cut off almost overnight. There was a deadline, sure, but for many the impact was immediate and, frankly, devastating. People were left scrambling, unsure when, or if, they'd regain control of their own money. It was a stark reminder of just how quickly things can change, and how fragile that sense of security really is. That's not a warning about some future dystopia. That happened. To real people. 4 years ago. And it's the exact mechanism this entire video is about to walk you through, already tested, already proven to work. 4 years to their 2030 deadline now, and here's what almost nobody's telling you. The organization behind this deadline already admitted in their own report that they're failing. Less than 1 in 5 of their targets are on track. Almost half stalled or going backward. A failing plan should slow down. This one didn't. It sped up. 193 countries signed one agreement, 17 goals, one deadline, 2030. This year, the UN graded its own homework. 17% on track. Their number, not mine. The United States pulled out, called it a threat to sovereignty. Argentina's president stood at the UN podium and called it a threat to your freedom, your property, your life. His words, failing plan, growing backlash. Normal organizations slow down at that point. This one didn't. Here's exactly what accelerated instead. And I want you to notice how every single piece of this connects back to those 2 examples I just gave you. Your money. It's called a CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency. Not crypto, the opposite of crypto, already live. Nigeria, the Bahamas, Jamaica, 40 more countries testing it right now. Central banks, not critics, central banks themselves, call this money programmable. Imagine expiry dates built into your money, spending restrictions built into your money, geofencing built into your money. Remember the trucker convoy? That was 200 accounts, frozen with a phone call, using a banking system that still, today, requires a human being to physically flag an account and a bank to physically process it. Now, just imagine that same freeze, except it's not a phone call. It's a single line of code applied to millions of accounts, instantly, automatically, the moment someone in power decides you're a problem. That's not a slippery slope argument. That's simply what programmable means. Applied at the scale the trucker freeze already proved is politically possible. Your identity. Europe. There's this law called IDEAS 2.0, already active, by the way. Every EU country legally must give citizens a digital ID wallet by the end of this year. Not a proposal, a deadline. We're just months away. That wallet holds your ID, your license, your bank access, all in one login. By 2027, banks and telecoms are required to accept it as your only proof of who you are. Think about your Kindle again. When Amazon deleted 1984, it didn't just delete a file. It deleted access instantly, remotely, for something you'd already paid for. Now, picture that same remote delete power, except instead of a book, it's your ability to prove who you are, open a bank account, or cross a border. One login holding everything means one login that can lock you out of everything. The same way Amazon locked a teenager out of his own homework notes. Surveillance and the shock doctrine, they're more connected than most people realize. That's the thing, isn't it? The tools of control, they evolve, but the logic behind them, well, that stays the same. Who's watching to make sure you comply? February 2026. US Border Patrol signs a deal with Clearview AI for facial recognition. March 2026. The FBI director tells Congress, on the record, they're buying your location data from private brokers specifically to avoid needing a warrant. 100 countries now own commercial spy software. One documented case, police used facial recognition to arrest protesters the morning after, once everyone had already gone home. Sound familiar? That's the same playbook as the Canadian bank freezes. Act after the fact, once organizing has already happened, when it's too late for the crowd to regroup. Money, identity, surveillance, all three moving at once. Why now? I'm not telling you wars are staged. I'm telling you something simpler and provable. September 11th, 2001. 6 weeks later, Congress passes the Patriot Act. Most of those exact powers had been requested by law enforcement before 9/11 and rejected repeatedly. The only thing that changed was a crisis big enough to silence objection. That's the ACLU and the Cato Institute, two groups that agree on almost nothing, independently confirming the same timeline. Historians call it the shock doctrine. Big changes move fastest when people are too scared, too tired, or too distracted to object. Look at the Canadian example again through that lens. An emergency declaration, used once, tested, and never fully rolled back in principle, just paused. Pandemic, war in Europe, war in the Middle East, inflation. Every single window, money systems, ID systems, surveillance systems move faster than the calm years around them. Now, here's what own nothing actually looks like once you connect all three systems together. It's not a mood, it's a mechanism, and well, you've already seen 2 working prototypes of it in this video. Now, here's what own nothing actually looks like once you connect all 3 systems together. Not a mood, a mechanism, and you've already seen 2 working prototypes of it in this video. Your home, subscribed, not owned. Miss a payment, lose access. No equity for your kids. Your car, same model, remotely disabled if the company decides to. The same way manufacturers can already remotely limit or disable features over the air today. Your money, programmable, expiring, restricted. The trucker convoy freeze at national scale. Your identity, one login controlling all of it, the Kindle deletion applied to your entire legal existence instead of just one book. A renter can be evicted. An owner can't, not in the same way. That's the entire difference between a citizen and a tenant, and that's the difference this system quietly erases. Most of the individual people building each piece of this aren't villains. Most of them think they're solving a narrow, boring problem. Fraud, efficiency, convenience. That's probably even true. But, it stops mattering the moment the pieces connect. Intent at the founding doesn't matter once the architecture exists. What matters is who's holding the switch in 20 years. So, here's the plan. Not fear. A plan. 6 pillars, and I'm not going to just name them and move on. I'm going to give you the actual first steps, because a plan you can't start this week isn't a plan. Notice how each one directly breaks one of the mechanisms you just watched actually happen. Pillar 1. Own something physically, and build it in layers, not all at once. The Kindle problem only exists because the book lived on someone else's server. A paper book on your shelf can't be deleted remotely. The trucker convoy freeze only worked because 200 families' entire net worth sat inside accounts one government phone call could touch. Gold or silver in your hand can't be frozen that way. Start small and specific. If you're building this from zero, a common, sane approach is a cash buffer first. Enough physical currency at home to cover a couple of weeks of basic expenses, kept safely, not as an investment, just as a shock absorber. Then, as you're able, a modest allocation into physical gold or silver, even small coins or bars bought gradually over time, beat waiting to buy a large amount at once. Then land or property if and when it's realistic for you. Even a small plot matters, because it's an asset nobody can delete with a software update. And finally, Tools and equipment tied to a real skill, a trade, a craft, something that lets you produce value even if every digital system around you goes dark for a week. None of this means distrust every bank or abandon digital finance entirely. It means never again having 100% of your net worth sitting in one system that a phone call can freeze. Pillar 2. Grow something, preserve something, and treat it as a skill you're building, not a project you finish. Food you grew yourself has no subscription fee, no login, no server that can go down or get deleted. Start absurdly small if you have to. A few pots on a balcony with herbs, chilies or tomatoes. The goal in year 1 isn't self-sufficiency. It's simply proving to yourself you can keep something alive and harvest from it. From there, learn one preservation method properly. Fermenting is often the easiest starting point, since it needs almost no equipment, just salt, water and vegetables. Drying and basic canning come next. If you ever get access to more land, even a small rented plot or a shared community garden, that's when this stops being a hobby and starts being real food security. The families who weathered the Canadian account freezes best weren't the ones with the most money. They were the ones who didn't need money for every single meal that week. Pillar 3. Depend on people, not platforms, and be deliberate about who's in that circle. The trucker convoy donors got frozen because their support ran entirely through banks and crowdfunding platforms, centralized choke points that a single order could shut down instantly. A neighbor who lends you cash directly can't be blocked by a government phone call the way GoFundMe and GiveSendGo were. Building this isn't abstract. It's specific people. Know 2 or 3 neighbors well enough that you could ask for help in an emergency, and they could ask you. Build or join one local network with a concrete function. A buying group for bulk food, a skill share circle, a tool lending group. The goal is a web of relationships where value and support move between people directly, with no app, no platform, and no institution able to insert itself in the middle and cut the connection. Pillar 4. Choose your location on purpose and actually run the audit. Does where you live route through 5 layers of centralized systems for basic daily life, building entry, payments, transport, even water? Or can you access water, food and community without all of it stacked on top of each other? This doesn't require moving tomorrow. It requires an honest audit. If the internet went down for a week, if your bank access froze, if your building's digital entry system failed, what would actually break in your daily life? For most people in dense, fully digitized cities, the answer is almost everything. Semi-rural areas and smaller towns with functioning local markets tend to fail more gracefully. Fewer digital dependencies stacked on top of each other. You don't need a bunker. You need a place where a single system going down doesn't take your whole life down with it. Pillar 5. Own your health. Build it as a practice, not a purchase. Know your own body's baseline. Your normal blood pressure, your normal weight range, how you actually respond to poor sleep or stress. Well enough that you'd notice something wrong before a system has to tell you. Build a real, consistent relationship with whole food and adequate sleep, not as a diet, but as infrastructure. Learn a handful of traditional or herbal remedies for common, minor ailments used alongside modern medicine, not instead of it. A backup layer, not a replacement for real medical care when you actually need it. The goal is simple. Reduce how much of your basic day-to-day functioning depends on any single app, subscription, or institution working correctly. Pillar 6. Protect your attention and treat it like the asset it is. Every minute spent doom-scrolling a manufactured crisis is a minute not spent building the other 5 pillars. This is the one that costs nothing, and honestly, most people still won't do it. Set a fixed time of day to check news once or twice, not constantly. Turn off breaking news notifications entirely. Nothing genuinely urgent to your life arrives that way. Ask, before consuming anything, is this information I can act on, or is this just consuming my time? In a media environment engineered to consume your focus exactly when it matters most, protecting where your attention goes is the highest leverage move you have, because it's the one resource that funds all the other 5. They told you the plan, in their own words, on their own website. You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. And they've already shown you, twice in this video alone, exactly how it works when it's switched on. A teenager's homework notes, and 200 families locked out of their own money. Here's the only correct response to that sentence. No, I won't. 4 years to their deadline. A plan they've admitted is failing, accelerating anyway. That's not a prediction. That's the paperwork right now for anyone willing to read it. You can't dismantle a global system alone, and this video never claimed you could. But you can make sure you're not standing on a single point of failure when it arrives. Own something, grow something, know your neighbors, choose your ground, guard your health, guard your attention.